for today. Thanks for remembering that, Natalie. So to start again now that we are recording, good morning, everybody. Our homework from last week was to look at the 4 themes that this group identified as some of the higher priority things for us to be working on, and trying to come up with implementation type items out of. These were all commonalities that we saw between our various regional plans, SRPC's Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, REDC's SEDS, RPC's Regional Master Plan. And we decided that this week we wanted to come with specific action items that this group, the Seacoast Economic Development stakeholders, could undertake to help move the bar on those various themes and make some progress towards improving conditions in the Seacoast. Those themes were housing, workforce development, community vibrancy / quality of life, and infrastructure. So this morning we wanted to go through a 2-step process. Some of you have done this with us before. If any of you participated in the Economic Development 10-year plan project outreach sessions from 3 or 4 years ago at this point, you were following a very similar process to what they did in those sessions. So for the first half of the call, we want to go through theme by theme and have everybody just share your ideas in the whiteboard for actions that we can take or advocate for. And with each theme, we'll take a moment once everybody has their ideas in place to talk through them, see if multiple people might have said the same thing, so we can group some of them together and trim the list down. And then once we have a shared understanding of, here are the 10 items, 11 items, however many there end up being, we'll move on to the next theme until we've done all 4 of them. And then for the second half, we will be taking those action items and rating them on a matrix where one spectrum is how big of an impact that action is likely to have from low to high. And then the other matrix would be how feasible is that action for this group to undertake, again, from low to high. So we'll end up having sort of a 4-square thing that should show us these are things that are highly feasible and likely to be highly effective. These things might be harder to do and or less effective, etc. So I can take some questions to start, and then we can dive right in. Robin, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I hate to be Debbie Downer, and I hope my words don't relay that impression. And at the same time, there's a lot of concern here that me and or us are involved in this conversation before our city managers and city councils. So I guess I'm wondering, in context of the order of city government, how does it ultimately play out that we're having these conversations before our city managers and mayors and city councils? Is this a little back-ass words? Or are we?
Jen, were you gonna chime in? Like, I don't think.
Dan, why are you smiling? What are you? Sorry, James.
I don't think this needs to be thought of as backwards. We're looking for things that sort of this collaborative entity can do and can undertake. And if you think that you would need your city manager's, permission to be involved with any of those things, that may be something that as we narrow down, hey, these are the things that this group would like to focus on, that maybe you would need to circle back with Bob and Michelle and make sure that they're on board. But I think for at least setting what are things that are within our collaborative purview.
Yeah.
The city managers aren't the ones who are directly involved here. I think for that sort of visioning it and planning sort of conversation.
Just sort of, it may be highly unique to me, but my group is very concerned and thinks this is inappropriate going from the bottom up.
If Bob wants to talk to me, he can. And
Bob should call me.
okay, if Bob wants to talk to John, he can.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, and Robin, to that end, this is more, it's a brainstorming session to identify what some regional priorities are. I do agree, like when we have things firmed up and we have a better idea of what the priorities are.
Yeah,
that makes sense to be the point in which to go back and say, okay, as a group, we've been doing some brainstorming, we've been doing some prioritization. Here are some things that the collective SEDS group is thinking of moving forward, and then get that that buy-in and approval that might be needed. Another thing to keep in mind is, like, we haven't decided, it hasn't been determined who is going to be the official implementer of these actions. So as we're simply an ad hoc group of economic development stakeholders from the Seacoast area or the greater Seacoast area. So who holds ownership is a whole separate question. Who's going to be doing the implementation, whole separate question. So those are
well, who's the authority that ultimately makes the decisions. I like, it's, yeah. So
yeah.
Call Bob.
Yeah, and have Bob feel free to reach out to me.
Darren, I saw your hand next.
Yeah, I jumped up as soon as when Robin said that, because yeah, Robin, unfortunately for you, you are a unique situation. I think with at least just looking at this, looking at the dais right here, you've got Dan, you got Nancy. I think we're told go forth and do good things. They don't want to get in our way, and I don't think it's a bottom-up approach in any way whatsoever. There's no chance that the town managers know anything what we know when it comes to workforce housing and the business community. I mean, that's our job. And so I think that I just think that it's over and over. I really hate to hear that town runs the way it runs, because I mean, you're really, really good at your job. We all are. And they should just say, go do good things and trust you to do the right thing. And when we have a product, we can bring it to them and they can participate or not. That's how I feel about it. I think we're doing great, great stuff.
Yeah,
All the right people at the table.
I love that participate or not. Yeah.
Nancy?
Morning, everybody. I'm happy to be here. I know I've missed a lot. I have watched the recordings, but today I don't happen to have my conflicting meetings. So, but Robin, what I would say is, from my perspective, what I have done all along is communicate with our city manager that this group has evolved partly out of COVID. And I think that there's been a lot of appreciation on her part for that. And we're sort of tentacles on the ground, and we're also the people that work and interface with our businesses, and that, we're working, towards some regional solutions here, which is something unique and really kind of exciting. And I would even suggest that once we have a format, and I don't know if you did this, but, I was able to share the progression of the Build Back Better Blue Economy program with the city manager. I sent copies of it to our Economic Development Commission. So they've been aware all along. And I think just through constant communication, but I'm wondering if maybe when we do come up with some solid action items that we all agree on here that we think are feasible and could be effective, we could convene our city managers, our delegations, and as a group, show who we are and what we've done. And I think that might be powerful.
Yeah, I do. That's a great point.
Dan?
I'd just like to concur with that. We have a department head meeting every 2 weeks, if not sooner. And we've been talking about what we've been doing at these things now for months. So it's not going to be any surprise. And I don't think anybody in the Dover management structure is concerned that we're doing this. I think they appreciate it. And as Darren said, I think we've got the right people around the table.
All right, are we ready to jump in? All right, Natalie, we lost the whiteboard. Would you mind sharing again?
Can everyone see that?
Yeah, it took a second.
Okay.
All right, so again, the first half, we're looking at just getting the ideas that you came with on paper. So again, if people need a refresher on how the whiteboard works, up at the top of your screen, you should have a green bar that says you're viewing Stratford Regional Planning Commission screen. Next to it, there is a view options drop-down menu. So if you click on that arrow and go down to annotate, it will bring you a separate toolbar. Please use the text function to enter your ideas for housing actions that we could take on this page. Try to be a little bit concise. We've preloaded some examples for you from SRPC, RPC, and RADC. So for example, we were thinking that this group could be a sounding board for our separate housing needs assessment, public outreach process once we get to the point of doing public outreach for that project.
Is there a different directive if you're using an iPad?
I do not know. Do you have a?
All I have is the pen, arrow, shape, text, color, that.
Do you want to send? Can you send it to me in chat and I'll enter
Yeah,
it for
I'll just
you?
put it in the, I'll just put mine in the chat.
Perfect.
Thank you.
James, these are supposed to be things done regionally, not within our own communities.
Correct. The idea would be things that this group could either attempt to undertake or potentially use some of the funding that BEA is anticipating having available for CEDARS to support, or if there were grants to write or things like that.
Okay.
I think we're thinking bigger than one municipality here.
Although, would we say no to a pilot project that could be replicated in other communities? I think, good brainstorming. I'd say throw any ideas out there that could potentially have regional benefit.
Yeah, I think in that situation, what we would want to be focused on probably is the pilot, the replicability, can we document this as
Mm-hmm.
a
Yeah.
case study sort of a thing?
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess a local project that we could get involved with in that way would make
Thank you for that suggestion, Jen. That's phenomenal. That's exactly at the state what we were talking about, is each region being able to focus on something and pilot something and then share collaboratively throughout the other CEDARS. Thank you.
Tim Roach must have wrote that last one.
Wasn't me, man.
Had to be Jen then, because that's spot on. That's an RPC thing though.
All right, any other ideas for housing? Going once, going twice. So let's run through these real fast, and if people need to chime in to explain some of their ideas or provide a little bit of nuance, they can. So starting in the top left, be a sounding board for the RHNA public outreach process. I talked about a little bit. Conduct or support or encourage housing charrettes and policy audits. I think generally thinking about, can we remove barriers to workforce housing or development of housing, and or plan for maybe some more site-specific solutions based on some of the opportunities that are available. Ensure land use policies create opportunities for workforce housing. Coordinate the annual Seacoast Workforce Housing Summit. Create tax incentives around employer-owned housing. Launch a program like Maine's to pave the way for zoning, permitting, and site planning. Who wrote that one? Can you?
James, I did. Maine, Charlie, they launched a program that basically gives developers a ready-to-go packet, so they don't have to spend all their time navigating these aspects.
So it's essentially a pre-approved site plan for, as long as you generally fit in with, this sort of a template or a footprint or something.
Yeah,
you have expedited permitting and you're off and running.
Right, they picked 7 communities to focus on, I think, so, yeah.
Gotcha, okay. Businesses provide affordable worker housing, rezone vacant commercial buildings, create zones dedicated to creation of de facto workforce housing using minimal unit square footage. So ideally, no or potentially expedited regulations necessary. Promote broad-based knowledge of available homeowner programs such as USDA Rural Development, FHA and NHHFA. Develop a housing production plan. Whose was that one?
That was me. So it's basically, instead of just like a little chapter in a city's master plan, it's a much more detailed document about how the city would like to see housing developed, and incorporates a lot of these components into a comprehensive master plan, but just focus on housing.
So the sort of things that come out of that plan would go from being a little bit amorphous potentially for, we generally want to support housing, we want to think about our zoning, things like that, to we want to encourage X units in Y years, sort of a thing.
Right. Yeah. Much more detailed, much more. It's an idea from one of the planners in Portsmouth. It's not mine.
Okay. As a robust regional entity, support legislation and funding that addresses the outcome of housing needs assessments, and need to infuse education on what is workforce housing into all aspects of community. So are there any opportunities in these where we might be able to combine a couple of these into one thing? Like I think maybe the housing charrette policy audit and ensure that land use policies create opportunities. Those I think might be able to work together.
Jim, I think my suggestion, businesses provide affordable worker housing. I included in that tax incentives around employer owned housing, which was not mine. So we can put those two together as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
I think the need to infuse education and the promote broad-based knowledge are similar. Too. I could see that being one session.
Yeah.
All that and the housing charrette get Robin to that, bringing in the folks you mentioned at the top of the meeting.
Mhm. All right, Natalie, are you good on that one? With those combinations?
Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. So I've got need to infuse education and promote broad-based knowledge, but I missed the first one that Dan said.
That was combining businesses provide affordable worker housing, and in pink on the left, create tax incentives around employer-owned housing.
Okay.
You good to move to the next one?
Yep. You guys good?
I think so. So same thing, this time we are talking about workforce development. So things like leveraging partner data. In this case, we were thinking of partners as the university system or the community college system, some of the market research that they do to inform their programs, and targeting skill sets that tie into regional industry clusters. Again, supporting those employer needs with workforce skills. So other ideas?
I'm sorry, Jim, which one are we doing now?
Workforce development.
Hey, James, where'd number 2 come from?
Targeting the skill sets needed for regional industry clusters. I think that was Tim.
That was very close to what I was going to write. I saw it, I was like, wow, all right, cool.
Other ideas? Going once, going twice? Oh, Nancy's just came in. All right, so we have leveraging some partner data in our research and planning processes, targeting specific skill sets, develop a fund to offset or forgive community college tuition if you work in the state for X years. That I think I have seen in various places as, potentially specific sectors. Has the idea gotten that far, whoever wrote that, or just sort of generally, however we can encourage workers to stay here? All right, not hearing anything. Let's assume that that's a general thing. We just want workers for anything if they stick around. And we can tailor it if need be. Advertise to access workers across the main border. Educate employers on the value of investing in current employees. Expand some of the Chamber of Commerce's work in the business and education partnership arena. Create an understanding around the new demands of employees and how employers can react to
Yeah, you cut me off there. You stopped it. It was if somebody can add to that. I don't have access to that anymore. To react to new HR demands, something like that.
Gotcha. Create or promote forums and events that provide employers opportunities to connect with potential employees and training institutions. Focus on connecting industry with students in the CTE programs. Allow multifamily or at least 5 units per property. Promote state workforce trading and apprentice programs directly to employers.
Should be training, but you know, hey, trading would be good too.
Any of these that look like opportunities to condense a little bit?
I think the first two, to leverage data, and would bring us to targeting skill sets, and then also adding in the create or promote forums. I think those three can all go together as sort of a cluster of activities that lead to the same thing.
So I see the top two on the left, and then which is the third one?
The
Oh,
middle.
the bottom center.
Yes. Like, I think that's sort of a pipeline of activity that leads to one direction.
Sort of. I see the forum as being a little bit different, but we also have a few things that are focused on connecting employers to practices, employers to training programs, employers to people. So that one might, I think it's probably covered if between that cluster and like focus on connecting industry with students in CTE programs.
That actually was what I meant. I misspoke. It was covered. It was covered by your face.
Okay. Sorry. Any other connections?
Well, James, the multifamily, at least 5 units per property, that's a good idea, but shouldn't that be in the private, number one, not number two? Slide number one.
I mean, I think we're getting into some of the issues of these themes are going to be related. Housing is definitely a thing that impacts workforce development. But we can, I think we can leave it here if we want to acknowledge that connection, or we can move it over with the housing things when we get to the next activity. Either way, Ginny?
I just wanted to ask about, kind of the focus here appears to be on employers. And I'm curious about what kind of data you all have around self-employed individuals in this region. Because, obviously I'm thinking about individual artists and makers who generally are self-employed and have multiple needs in terms of skill set training and other things to be able to manage their businesses. So I'm just curious about that.
I think it's a really good point, and that, we're really talking about, you can blow it up to be getting more data on the gig economy here. Doesn't have to be specific to artists, but I think I see 1 and 2 in column 1 as, maybe what we do is promote a survey, work with SBDC or something, but also include the gig economy.
I think that's great. And actually, there will be some data coming out of the SBDC's most recent round of business resiliency surveying. And that might be very useful. They're going to be presenting that data next Thursday afternoon.
Thursday at 3 o'clock. Yeah, so we should have some good information out of that for sure around this workforce discussion.
Great. I do want to keep us moving a little bit to give us time for the second round. Natalie, are you good to move to the next one?
So what I have for here is leverage data to research labor gaps and identify opportunities and target skill sets, and connect employers to training programs and people.
Yeah, I think those were
Good.
the ones that we were
Okay.
combining.
Sorry, I can't see faces, so I don't know if people are shaking their heads or what, but I'll move on to the next one.
So infrastructure, and this one I think has gone from some of the big regional stuff to some specific project kind of things. As we said, our specific role may vary depending on what that project is like, whether it's thinking about pilot, whether it's thinking about can we support things that ultimately need to be implemented by other people. But I think this is something that we can have a variety on. So some of the things that we already have on here, study opportunities for system linkages and expansions, some things specific to some Seacoast resiliency things like 1A or Ocean Boulevard through Hampton and really the entire Seacoast, and the Seabrook Bridge as potential resiliency kind of projects that have been identified in municipal hazard mitigation plans and climate change vulnerability assessments. You could also throw in regional or statewide plans like the Coastal Risk and Hazards Commission report for that. Evaluate expansion or construction of wastewater or sewer infrastructure, and prioritize transportation investment in the region's already developed areas through weighting of project selection criteria. So if you've got other ideas, please pop them in.
Thank you.
So I think we've got support legislation, Todd, that looks like it has turned into a more fleshed out comment. Same with the LIK. So could we delete those and there we go. All right, so we've got the ones that I already read. and then support legislation that encourages sharing of intermunicipal infrastructure, help create a transportation system that's not reliant solely on automobiles. Examples: commuter rail from Portsmouth to Boston, expand coast bus service, consideration of creative placemaking or public art in infrastructure projects, encourage interconnected multimodal transportation systems with alternate travel networks, link higher density housing to sprawl prevention through zoning, create a long-range port improvement plan to ensure growth of this critical gateway for commerce, and as a region, support public transit through sustaining local routes and expansion of routes to maximize workforce mobility. Who did the port one?
I did one of the port ones.
The long-range port improvement plan?
Yeah, I think somebody else typed the exact same thing I did pretty much, but I'm not sure.
Oh,
who it
okay.
was.
To what extent does the Port of New Hampshire do their own long-range planning like that?
It's a great question. I'm not sure. They do some, but I think my impression is that it's somewhat project to project and not like a 10-year plan. But Nancy or others may be able to speak better to that than me.
They do have I don't know if it's a 10-year plan, but they do have a long range infrastructure improvement plan and, and funding ask.
Okay.
They're actually really organized in that way in terms of aspirational goals, strategic goals.
But so whether that's creation of a long-range plan or if they already have one, potentially better integrating it into other regional economic development conversations, for our other long-range plans, et cetera. Other things that we could potentially combine here. We had a few transit related things. So maybe we can focus that into the help create transportation systems that aren't reliant on automobiles, support public transit through sustaining local routes, encourage interconnected multimodal transportation systems. Those might be things that we could combine. Oh, it looks like one snuck in on the bottom potentially as a couple different comments. I assume that's electronic vehicle charging stations, to either be electronic ready or have those stations available right now, because those vehicles are seeing more prevalence. All right, next and last one.
James, I think 1 and 4 could kind of are similar too. The linkages and expansion for the wastewater.
Oh, you're totally right. And I think the support legislation.
I don't want to dilute number 1 for that system linkages, but expansion, I don't know. They seem the same to me, or they seem to have a similar outcome.
Yeah, I think the supporting legislation that encourages that sharing, I think that's all part of sort of the same project of understanding the opportunities, understanding what it would take. So I think that could be part of one conversation. All right, let's flip over to the last one. So quality of life action items, and I think we can take a somewhat broad view of this one. This might be community vibrancy things within our communities. This could be some programming kind of things, but examples that we have already are looking at some of the temporary outdoor dining or public space improvements that were made and thinking about how we might be able to make some of those things permanent, supporting the New Hampshire Seacoast Greenway, encouraging new residential development or amenities in or near downtowns and village centers. And there were other examples on that one, but they were all generally density, sort of concentration related.
This is lovely. I haven't had to type anything. Thank you.
It's like the ultimate Jenga game.
Yeah, you guys have a lot of ideas for this one. All right. Last call. Seeing none. So we've got the three that I wrote or that we had pre-populated. Then we have write public art and performance into master plan chapters, explore linkages between towns, for example, rail trails that connect communities and make them a tourist destination, encourage employers and childcare centers to partner to provide cost sharing opportunities, encourage saving open space for area residents and visitors to the area can enjoy, improve access to human-powered water-based recreation, zoning for food trucks, promote and advertise recreation activities, draft regional pitch statements that each municipality can use in recruiting, support state funding for the arts and culture, consideration of creative placemaking and public art in infrastructure projects, support the arts in our communities through public grants. Dover has an example, promote other programs like Artist Sunday, something like Black Friday or Plaid Friday. But it sounds like it's a program that runs the Sunday after Thanksgiving. Promote businesses in the arts, display local artwork in downtown businesses, create Seacoast quality of life digital packet that can be made available for free to all businesses that are seeking workers so they can use it as a recruitment tool, support community. Natalie, are you able to make it bigger again? Some of those are cut off on my screen. Support community trash cleanups. You provide supplies like bags and gloves. Develop a regional marketing campaign that touts the Seacoast quality of life, such as amenities of our historic communities, excellent education, arts, culture, great transportation, etc. I think I got to all of those. I think the zoning for food trucks and the top left one, recommending permanent policy changes, are things that could potentially be linked. Other commonalities that people are seeing?
I'm seeing a lot of, kind of marketing and tourism related ideas here. And I think you could probably combine most of them. Leads me to a question, and now I'm showing my ignorance, but in terms of promotion and regional promotion, there isn't an entity, a single entity that's doing that, correct? Besides, the Division of Travel and Tourism.
Yeah, I think my interpretation would be it sort of jumps from the state level to potentially some of the things that the Seacoast chambers do as a collaborative effort.
Yeah.
Ben, Margaret, if you're still on, does that seem accurate to you?
That's pretty limited in scope. There was some funding through the CARES Act that was flowed to the Seacoast Chamber Alliance to do some of that work, but it really isn't ongoing in a significant way. I would say is a fair way to put that. Margaret, you want to add anything?
Yeah, that was in response just to that specific program. But the tourism, I mean, it depends on what your focus is. Hampton and Portsmouth are much more tourism focused than Dover is. So we try to support that and get involved in it, but it's not a huge focus for us. We've got anchors in our community that, people come to the Children's Museum, they come to the Woodman Institute, but we're not a huge tourism destination. So
And Portsmouth and Hampton do partner on certain aspects of that. We go to travel shows together, things of that nature, but there's not like a big advertising budget pulled together, and there's not like ad spend combined.
And I know in the past, and I'm assuming you'll continue, Ben, that you kind of wave the whole Seacoast flag when you're there. It's because the other the Falls Chamber and Rochester and Exeter we don't focus on tourism, but we appreciate you guys waving the whole Seacoast flag when you're promoting us as a tourism destination.
Certainly.
So James, I want to point out that what I wrote on there is different. I don't want to conflate that with the tourism, with the marketing, because those are both regional, municipal, and state efforts. What I'm talking about is creation of a digital tool that can be made available to businesses that highlight the quality of life in the region. Totally different, in my opinion, because the use of it is not to draw somebody to a community; it's to draw somebody to a community that a business is in. This is a big deal for SIG, by the way.
Yeah, and I had a similar one that was on there. I put the draft regional pitch statements, and the immediate impetus for that was, UNH was working on a proposal for a national program that I guess embeds in universities and was considering relocating. And so they asked me if I had regional, region-wide language about, here's information about the quality of life in the greater Seacoast. And we didn't really have anything from a pitch statement perspective, region-wide developed. So that was something where I was wondering if we might be able to put some of that together, where a municipality, Dan, Robin, Nancy, you have your, here's how great Dover is, Somersworth, et cetera. But if we happen to also have shared language that we sort of put our heads together and said, here's how great the Seacoast is on top of those, you might be able to share some of those resources about here's Dover and how we fit in the bigger region. Dan?
Just wanted to mention along what you're saying, to your point, we have more tourism in Dover than you think. And a lot of it is due to our proximity to Kittery. We have 46 bus tours a year that come to our hotels, eat in our restaurants, and shop one day in Kittery. And it's a pretty significant thing. The other thing we have, I guess you could call it tourism, we have a 2-sheet ice arena that has 2 hockey tournaments a year, regional ones throughout the whole Northeast, and 2 swim meets in our Olympic swimming pool. And each one of those brings in about $300,000 a weekend, because they are full weekend family kinds of things. So people stay overnight, eat in restaurants, hit our retailers. So there's a bigger tourism component if you do go the regional route. And I think we can do better on that score.
Yeah, thanks for that perspective, Dan. Ben, was that a hand?
I just wanted to echo the quality of life packet concept from Darren. We've had requests for that also through a few companies out of the trade port. So I do think there's a need for something, and I think it should be regionally based, because just because they're looking at a job in Dover or Portsmouth, they are most likely going to live in another community. And it just seems to be the way it goes a lot of times. So I think something regionally would be great.
And Nancy.
Thanks. I'm not sure how many people on this call remember, but I guess I'm been around long enough to we were involved with the state when they were promoting precision manufacturing, and specifically the Great Bay's opportunities for Albany engineering. And we were trying to draw companies from Canada to the Seacoast. So we put together a Seacoast-based promotional packet for the state to take to some of their trade shows up in Canada. And I think it was, marginally successful. It was not to draw companies that are already in Canada, it was to draw expansion of those companies here. So there is a model for it, and the state was really great at sort of being the center point for it.
Margaret?
I just feel like I want to sort of apologize to Dan. I wasn't trying to imply that Dover didn't have a lot going on, and we certainly work very hard to promote that at the chamber. The focus is a little different, I would say, as you indicated, Dan. We're more of a day trip. People probably aren't going to take their 2 weeks vacation and stay in Dover. But yes, if you're staying in Hampton or Portsmouth or Kittery, take a ride over, come to Lookies and Chewies and all that. So I certainly support everything that we're saying in terms of tourism promotion, and we want in. We work very closely with the state. We want to be in the guidebook. We want to have a presence on the website. for sure. So Dan, I just want to make sure you didn't think I wasn't saying there isn't a lot going on in Dover, because I am definitely a champion of that. And I would love to be part of a regional effort to promote the region there. When I first worked for the tourism office back in 1994, Robin, you'll remember this, there was a Seacoast tourism group. And it's like White Mountains Attractions or Lakes Regions Attractions. There was a Seacoast Tourism Association, and it was all of the different communities in the Seacoast promoting the region. Instead of Portsmouth doing Portsmouth, Hampton doing Hampton, Dover doing Dover, we promoted on a regional basis. So I would love to be part of an effort to get back to that.
Oh, Margaret, no apologies necessary. I know you bleed green.
Darren?
Yeah, I have to hop off in a minute. I have a parent teacher conference thing today. They're doing that. This is the day they do it. But just real quick, I want to put a plug in there. The thing I wrote, I've been thinking about for kind of a long time, because the businesses are all just having so much trouble recruiting. Obviously, a lot of that's got to do with workforce. We all agree the quality of life is the pretty much main driver. We all want to be here. So when the monies come available, creating that a very professional tool through like somebody Robin knows, I know she knows a lot of folks that do that. That might be a very good use of some of those funds. So anyway, just my thoughts. Thank you all so much. And I will see you Friday, probably.
Yep. So I think we need to wrap this up, and I think are starting to get a little bit into the weeds of some of these specific items, which may indicate some things that we would prefer to start working on, but I want to make sure that we revisit the sort of prioritizing part of this activity next week. So thank you all for a great conversation. We will try and compile these and be prepared to make that conversation run smoothly next week. So anticipate hearing mostly from Natalie for that conversation. Also, Nancy popped into the chat a list of all of the nationwide applicants for the Build Back Better. If any of you want to take a look at sort of who our competition is. I don't see a number of applicants in that proposal, but it runs 30 pages long. So it looks like a pretty long list. So we will sort of follow that conversation. Apparently it's 529 applicants.
Do you have any idea how many they'll accept to get through phase one?
The initial program materials were indicating something like 50 to 60 proposals for phase one. And then I think they would be doing a follow-up invite to people who were successful in those awards, and that would be the entire pool for 20 to 30 awards in phase two. So you know, it seems like roughly 10% of the people who submitted are going to be funded on this one. But we'll keep our fingers crossed, and we'll keep you posted if we hear anything. All right, thank you all. See you next week.
Thank you, bye.